Joining us again this week, Washington insider Scott Jackson, host of the team's post-game show. Again, Scott, the past week against the Browns, Dwayne Haskins continues his hot and cold run, on target sometimes, but overall, he just can't seem to get the ball into the hands of his receivers.
Well, the bigger problem last week, Bruce, was he got it in the hands of the Cleveland receivers on the defense, obviously 3 times, which really disrupted any chance this team had to win. The 4 turnovers by Dwayne, 5 overall as a team. They didn't take the ball away. Dwayne started off pretty good. I mean, they had a pretty good start of the offense. He gave Scott Turner a lot of credit, got him in a rhythm early. They got an early lead for the first time in this young season. Didn't do anything in the second quarter except turn the ball over. And then in the third quarter, they had back-to-back touchdown drives, retake the lead. The defense, though, was unable to keep that lead very long. And then the offense went back to turning the ball over, at the hands of Dwayne. So it was definitely a rough week. There were some highs, but certainly more lows than highs when you lose a game like that. And, this will be interesting coming up this week and against a much tougher opponent.
So, Scott, the coaches see the obvious problems, but Coach Rivera is at least honest enough to admit that there is a certain point where you're no longer a rookie. How short do you think Haskins' leash is?
And that's a good question because Ron Rivera was very positive Sunday. I spoke to him right after the game. He was, supportive of Dwayne. Then on Monday, a little bit of a different tone. He mentioned a cutoff point at some point with this process, but did still admit that he needs the experience. It's hard to say. Look, they got a couple really tough opponents coming up, obviously, in Baltimore and Los Angeles and the Rams. So I don't know if it's in the next few weeks. And even if he were to be pulled out of a game, would you put him back in the next week? He needs to play. Bottom line is there's 24 combined starts between college and pro football for Dwayne Haskins. It's not a lot of football as a starter. He's still learning. To his credit, he came back on Wednesday when he spoke with the media and said, look, I was staring down guys. I mean, right after the game, he didn't feel he was, but then after he got a chance to watch the tape, he realized what he was doing as well. But he has to take it on the field, and obviously he's got to clean it up. Before this past week, he wasn't turning the ball over. Now, he wasn't very accurate either before this game, but he wasn't turning the ball over. This week, it almost like he got off to that quick start, and he almost got too comfortable with what he was doing and got a little lazy with the progressions.
2 early season challenges, Kyler Murray and this week Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense. Scott, the defense has another dual threat quarterback to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare, right? You got Kyler Murray, 2 weeks ago. Now you have Lamar Jackson, coming in to FedEx Field this week. It's going to be a big challenge. They've got to do a good job at, lane integrity. And, Jackson's a little bigger than Murray. He's not going to maybe wiggle on you. He'll run you over at times. He's very strong. Not quite the passer Murray is at times, but certainly the Ravens offense, I think, can be better than they have been in terms of the passing game over these first 3 weeks. So it's still very dangerous. And again, Jack Del Rio's going to have to earn his paycheck, and so are the rest of the guys in the defense.
And they're going to be hungry after that game against Kansas City on Monday night. Now, on a positive note, some of the younger guys look to be growing up quickly. Rookie Antonio Gandy Golden, he was a 4th-round pick, and Isaiah Wright, who was an undrafted free agent, both with big plays against the Browns when their numbers were called.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Isaiah Wright, the undrafted free agent out of Temple. He did some really good things that didn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet. There was a couple plays he made that were called back due to penalties, but he was very active. He's got sure hands, and he also saved Dwayne Haskins from an embarrassing 4th interception in the game, which would have been actually was the first scoring drive. It was a big save on his part playing defense. And then you had Gandy Golden, you mentioned, finally getting on the field a little bit more in the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's got to run a little bit lower than his pads. Oh boy, he was running upright. He got jacked up on that end and around, although it was a big play. He's got to do a better job of that. He still also needs to learn how to get off the line of scrimmage, but they like him and his potential for some big playability down the road.
And Scott, watching 3 games now, I still wonder if having Adrian Peterson available would be helpful. I guess now we can assume that Antonio Gibson is the #1 back and J.D. McKissick is the 2nd man up.
Yeah, I think that's the pecking order right here. Remember, Gibson's still very young at the position. Out of Memphis, was more of a receiver than a running back. He's getting better each week. McKissick's a veteran. When they get him in space, he's really good. You can see he's got some really nice cutback moves and some wiggle. Sure-handed guy as well. Yeah, I mean, Peterson would have been an upgrade, no question, in terms of just a pure runner, but you have to get Peterson the ball 15 to 20 times a game or even more for his effectiveness really to kick in. And they weren't ready to do that. They're trying to go young, so I understand what they were doing. And I think it would have hurt the growth, obviously, of Gibson in particular if he had still been here.
Bruce Rader back with Washington insider Scott Jackson. Scott, your final thoughts about Sunday's game against the Ravens and Washington's chances of getting back into the win column?
Well, they've got to get a fast start. We talked about it last week. They did it to some degree, but then they hurt themselves by turning the ball over. This week, against the Ravens, as you saw on Monday night, look, they're not a good come-from-behind team. Now, granted, this is not the Chiefs they're playing. They're playing Washington. I wish that Pat Mahomes was under center, but he's not. They've got to get off to a fast start. They got to build a lead. The Ravens do not play as well. Lamar Jackson does not play as well, quote, off schedule. They like to be even or the lead. Otherwise, if they have to get into a pass-oriented offense, more so than run, they're not as good. I mean, if you can make Lamar Jackson a drop back passer, you got a chance to win the game, but that's a big task to obviously take care of for this Washington defense. And the Washington offense has got to help with the defense this week, which they obviously didn't do in Cleveland.